Alright, hopefully this will be an easy one today. This is the back end of a Torpedo style heater. Now, said Torpedo heater operates with a motor here, and that motor on the front has the fan that blows the air through the tube, and on the back here is a pump. Now the pump is, as you could say, it quasi positive displacement. Inside there's a rotor like this, and said rotor is driven by the back of the fan motor through that little bushing. And then in this baggie here, there are little things they call vanes. Now each of those vanes sits inside these slots, and this whole thing sits off center in an egg-shaped housing. Now as this spins, the centrifugal force pushes the vanes out against the wall, and it scoops the air and pushes it down a hose. Now that hose then goes up to an airbrush looking nozzle, and that nozzle uses the incoming air pressure from this pump and the siphon effect to push the fuel out the nozzle. Now that is the entire fuel pump system on this. So between cracked up lines and clogged nozzles, there's not much to go wrong. And in this case, what's happened is this particular wheel has spun so many times, these little vanes, little square vanes, are not square anymore. One side's actually gotten significantly shorter from grinding on the inside of the housing. Because of that, they're not sealing against the wall correctly, and it's not making any meaningful pressure. So we will see how a fresh set goes. I've got questions about this. There's already a chip out of this wheel right here, this replacement wheel. But the wheel isn't the problem, the vanes are. So hopefully we can pop this thing apart, and hopefully this is the right size part. It was ordered based on the model number of the actual device, but not from Enreco themselves. It was ordered from Amazon. And when you pay, I think it's $75 for the entire heater, is what my buddy Dave paid, you really aren't concerned about genuine parts. They just need to fit. One washer down, there we go. Pump housing just pulls off. And now, it sure looks like it's the right size. And I oiled the heck out of this last time I was in here. Put some light on it so you can see it. And the reason I oiled it was to try and cheat the fact that these vanes are not long enough. And what happens is when you get all the way to the bottom, you can see the vane is loose. And because it can wobble, it will bind the motor up, because it will get in there stuck. And I don't even see that. The one side of these is extremely worn. So let's pull this sucker out of here and see if this other one fits. Little tension with the screwdriver. I think I'm dropping parts I don't need. It sure looks like it'll fit. Pushing in. Interesting. Okay, it looks like the center bore is different. So that does not appear to fit. compare it to, it sure looks like it'll fit. So I think the gist of it is the bushing's different. And because of that, it does not want to fit. And the old bushing does not fit in the new part. But with a little modification it will. But I wonder if we can just simply reuse the old rotor. I don't think it is in bad condition. Put the fresh vanes in. These have two polished sides. I'm going to set them up so there's a polished side out. So the polished side rubs on the housing. Make sure it fit tight. That's better. Yeah, they're about 1/8 of an inch longer. Possibly too long. Okay. So there's a key piece of information in the instructions. If you loosen the pump body, it is actually adjustable. Oh yeah, it's nice and tight. Sure looks like it's going to stay in there a little bit better. Alright. I purposely have got it a little bit snug. I'm going to go ahead and grab a feeler gauge and make it a little looser. So it recommends 3 to 4 thousandths. That's 4 thou right there. So I have 4 thou all the way around, nice and snug. That's all it suggests, so that's not that bad. Darn sure these are nice and tight, don't want to come loose. And the pump housing is actually bored out to more than a 1/4 inch. It's 3/8 of an inch. So hot dog down a hallway and then suddenly you find the hole in the middle. Makes lining these screws up a little bit difficult. And I learned when I had this apart to diagnose the problem initially that you do not want to tighten these first 2 despite them being in, because it's going to be difficult to get the other 4 in. So as usual, the Amazon off-brand universal kit saved the day, it looks like, but it not perfect. I could easily bore that bushing out a little bit and be fine, because if you look, this has two flatted sides, and the shaft, they are less flatted. So if you stuck a 1/4 inch drill bit in there and bored it out a little bit real carefully, it would be absolutely fine. I'm assuming that's just a universal shaft type, and this particular brand of motor and pump doesn't use that style. Despite this being a made in America, American branded, big made in USA stickers on it heater, it actually does have a made in China pump in it that so far has lasted well more than a decade. So I have no problem with that, other than, you know, you just have to expect it to do things its own way a little bit. And I'm sure Enrico used multiple different pumps from multiple different vendors over the years. So even if this is a officially compatible part, it may not be perfectly compatible with all years. Matter of fact, if I could have gotten a serial number off this, I probably could have gotten better parts from it. I do not know the date of this unit, but I know it makes an absolutely terrifying amount of heat on only the diesel that was already in it when we got it. And it's enough to heat my entire shop, which is basically a warehouse. Oh yeah. So an important note about these plastic housings. The side with the hose on it is the output. Filter is the input. So this, your adjustment screw and your gauge port need to be on the side with the hose, obviously, because the air goes in through the pump, comes out into this side of the housing, is bled out and read, and then blown into the actual nozzle. Now the gasket is only half of this. I don't know why there's no gasket on this side, but the gasket needs to be on the output side of the housing, or it's going to leak like a sieve and not work correctly. Also, these screws need to be firmly tightened but not over tightened. This housing is only plastic and it will fail far easier than you expect it to. So snug them up, make sure the gasket's got a little squish, make sure it doesn't wiggle relative to the housing, and then test it. And if you can feel air or even squirt bottle it and see if you see bubbles, give it a little 1/4 turn on each one until it stops leaking. Because of how bright it is today, you won't be able to see any fire unless you take it in the garage. However, you should hear it light. Now, the pump's tight in the housing, so it'll take a minute to free up, but it should light off. So after a few minutes of run time, you should wear the rotors in, and they should actually seal better and fit better in the housing. I can feel the heat over here. I'm 10 feet back. That is a lot of heat. Let's try an exhaust temperature test that I learned working at a foundry. That's just a piece of good old blue tape.